As we embrace an era of AI, as we look at tech transformation, the digital transformation of businesses is absolutely clear. It's absolutely critical going forward. Nigel Vaz with us, the CEO of Publicis Sapient, which does a lot of this and is a global leader. Thank you very much, Nigel, for being with us. How do you use AI to drive digital business transformation?
Very simply, AI today is going to be embedded in every single aspect of transformation, because I feel like artificial intelligence is essentially us going from human action driven approaches to businesses moving any process forward to now more and more agentic architecture. So the simple way to think about it is you have your digital workforce and your physical workforce working together, or as we like to think about it, as companion AI. So think about Iron Man and Suit.
Right.
When you start to think about industries like, for example, hotels.
Yeah.
When you go to a hotel, you and I travel a lot. We stay in hotel rooms all over the place. How often is it that you have to spend 10 minutes at a check-in desk explaining what kind of room you like?
Right.
Because they don't know.
No.
You want to be close to the... And even if you've got preferences there, often the logic that sits behind the decisioning to make that on a dynamic basis on the time when you get there, depending on who's checked out, takes human intervention.
Right.
This is an example of something simple that AI could do very simply. And this is a simple example. We're working in fields like radiology and oncology, where you start to see things like radiologists who've had years and years of experience now being assisted by models, which can accurately start to assist them, and in some cases even make the call on whether or not to refer a patient, for example, for a biopsy.
No, that's absolutely critical. We've seen that in India as well, increasingly the diagnosis of patients using AI. Essentially a second set of eyes, in a sense.
I mean, if you think about medical science, right, it's all pattern recognition. And AI has got incredible pattern recognition because you've now got all of the patterns available at your fingertips. When you start to think about areas like financial services, we've always been using AI. We should be very clear. We've been using AI for years. We've had predictive AI. The big shift now is, rather than looking at data and trying to predict outcomes, you've reached a stage where AI can now create, which is, I think, what's really exciting about this new wave of AI where you have autonomous agents that can actually go on your behalf and actually execute shopping. Or they might be able to make a decision on a credit mortgage application. And all of these things in conjunction with humans, but in many instances doing things that humans don't want to do. We recently finished a very large piece of work for a very big bank managing millions and millions of dollars, or billions of dollars, I should say, in wealth. And this is essentially creating an architecture around AI, helping their teams start to basically go through the entire process. Now allowing the human to focus on the relationship with the customer, as opposed to consuming a lot of research to try and produce insights that might benefit them.
The obvious question which everybody asks is job losses in AI. I know the standard answer to that is that people will reskill. But I think in economies around the world, in South Asia and in India, where I'm from, there is a sense that, we're a labor-based economy at a certain level. There are traditional forms of employment as well. AI is all very well, but then people might lose jobs and we may not have the skills to replace them. So how does one look at this conundrum?
Well, I think I'll start by answering specifically with our relationship and my perspective in India. I feel like India has done an incredible job in terms of building the India stack. You know, you start with essentially a country that's built a public-private partnership around payments with UPI, national identity, which has brought so many people into the fold of being able to run enterprises in the formal economy. I think now AI is only going to accelerate this, because essentially when you think about job losses, you have to look at the fact that there are going to be challenges in industries where people need to be reskilled. But I also feel like the opportunities that AI is going to create. I mean, when you think about an economy like India, the amount of consumption that India is going to require in the context of energy, in the context of healthcare, in the context of financial services, every one of these things today is not going to be possible in the traditional context. I wrote a book on digital business transformation, and that's the work Sapient, our company, practices. And what we've observed over years of doing this is, right now we're at the stage where you can think about the early advent of the internet. You know, we built some of the first online banks back then, some of the first online retail businesses. And the conversation today in AI is like that. It's like, well, if the browsers are here, what's going to happen with travel
So AI
agents?
is the new internet, in a sense.
Not really. I feel like AI is going to take us significantly further. I feel like the internet reimagined a lot of jobs in the context of using a different technology to do it. I think AI is going to create so many more jobs because I think we're just barely scratching the surface of things like personalized medicine, things like education, where now you have the ability to tutor a kid individually, right? I mean, all of those things are available to a very small segment of the population now. So our view on this is industries, for example, like my own industry, the tech industry, I think has to take a long, hard look at itself and say, look, where we've built in markets like India, companies have built large workforces doing lower skilled IT jobs on the basis of cost arbitrage. We've got to start to really think about how will these jobs move to more value creation. But I think the opportunity is going to be pretty significant because I feel like over the next 5 to 10 years, you're going to require a significantly larger number of tech literate entrepreneurial workers in an economy which is even more knowledge based than today.
I'm just trying to understand, in the past, software was a service, and now you've got services
as a software.
So just for a larger audience, explain the shift that's taken place.
A few years ago, I think Mark Andreessen articulated this software is eating the world, right? And this concept was that everything that could be done by a piece of software will start to get coded into software. I think what you're now seeing with services as software is the transition of the fact that software is now able to start to create opportunities in a space like the services space, where you are exponentially able to produce outcomes that you just weren't able to do. So you have large sectors of the services industry, which historically were simply providing people in the context of creating software. Now what you have is a lot of companies like ours building platforms and AI platforms that are creating software from those platforms that have been created. So effectively, you've gone from just companies taking products, which are software products, and deploying them, to companies basically saying, we can now start to create that software on these platforms that will continue to evolve on an incremental basis, on a real-time basis, depending on what you're trying to accomplish, which is a really significant shift.
Sure. There isn't necessarily a one-size-fits-all model for AI in many cases. The regional sensitivities, the language and cultural differences between, let's say, a user in New York and a user in Chennai are very different.
Sure.
How do you account for that in software which you are looking at, or at AI which you are looking at?
Well, very simply, you have to realize whenever people talk to me about AI strategy, I first start with what is your data strategy? AI is fundamentally based on data. And if you have bad data, you're going to have bad AI.
Right.
So another way to think about this is the AI models that are fueling somebody in Chennai have to be based on data that is relevant to that user. And AI fueling somebody in New York has to be relevant on data fueling somebody there. And when we look at it from an enterprise perspective, a lot of the work we're doing is essentially building AI platforms which accelerates our clients' journeys and their customers' journeys by leveraging their data to serve their customers, because ultimately that's where you create value. So in many global organizations that we work with, who have offices all around the world and customers all around the world, the data that's being used, say, for example, to provide offers in a restaurant in India for a global quick service restaurant brand, and in Chicago are going to be uniquely tailored on the basis of the data of the audience that is aimed at. Now, if you do generic AI, if you will, right, where you ask ChatGPT a question and I ask ChatGPT a question, the answers will vary because it's obviously trained on the data of the internet. Right. But most organizations that are providing AI services to their customers are now going to leverage their own data and leverage their customers' data to ensure that the relevance and the contextual nature of what you're asking is factored in. So as an example today, we don't need to, if you are somebody that is banking with a particular bank and you are actually in a car dealership, because we know contextually where you are and because we know you've applied for a car loan, we can say, hey, we can see that you're interested in getting a car at this point in time, you're pre-approved for this loan already. That's essentially an automated agent making a decision on the basis of contextual information for that customer. So you start to get super relevant, as opposed to, historically what we used to have to do is guess at what you were trying to do.
Ethics and regulation. Who decides what's ethically correct and who regulates? Because it's an interconnected world.
Absolutely. And I think this is one of the biggest obstacles and challenges. I think, I think as we all know, sitting in Davos, we're in a world today which is multilateral. It's very hard to get unilateral regulations going. You have different regulations in the United States and different ones in India and China and Europe. At the same time, we as people, particularly of a global nature, are going to create and have exposure to all of these.
Right.
And I think what you're going to start to see is standards develop in various geographies, which I hope will start to become standards that other people adopt if it applies to their context. And a good example of this is GDPR, which came out in Europe. And I think widely got adopted even by companies that weren't forced to adopt it because they felt like it was a sensible regulation at the time.
Right.
Now, I think over the course of AI, I think we've had lots of meetings in global forums to try and define standards on a global basis. But I think what you will find is that a lot of regulation will have to be tailored to the context and the expectations of people in markets. Because I feel like fundamentally, if I'm trading my data to you as a government or as a company, if you use my data to create value for me, I might be able to live with the fact that I have to share my data with you. But if you aren't going to create value for me, I have a challenge. We in this digital space use an acronym we call SPEED. It stands for strategy, product, experience, engineering, data, and AI. And if you're not very clear on what your strategy is and what you're trying to accomplish with AI or indeed with your transformation, and if you have a project mindset as opposed to a product where you're constantly evolving, and if you're not building compelling experiences for me as a customer and not engineering them well, and you're not using my data to create value for me, then you're going to slow me down and you're not going to move at speed and I'm not going to benefit from it.
Right. Thank you so much for sharing those insights. Absolutely fascinating. It's here to stay. What form AI takes in the future, I think, is something that we all need to debate going forward. Wonderful speaking to you.
Very nice.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.